Evelyn Carter, a graceful black woman in her early 50s, sat quietly in the corner of the grand Whitmore estate. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, her hands calloused from years of hard work, yet her posture carried quiet dignity. She had grown up in poverty, worked as a waitress, and endured countless hardships before meeting Jonathan Whitmore, a wealthy white businessman who had fallen in love with her despite his family's disapproval. For 15 years, Evelyn had been Jonathan's wife. Together, they had built a life filled with laughter, gardens blooming in the backyard, and evenings spent reading by the fire. But Jonathan's sudden death left Evelyn surrounded by vultures, his wealthy white relatives, who had despised her from the moment they laid eyes on her. The mahogany-paneled study smelled of cigar smoke and money. Portraits of stern Whitmore ancestors glared down from the walls, pale faces frozen in judgment. Around the polished table sat Gregory Whitmore, Jonathan's arrogant older brother, Victoria, his sharp-tongued sister-in-law, and Charles, their sneering son. They eyed Evelyn with the kind of disdain that wasn't just about class. It was about race. She wasn't one of them, and they wanted her to feel it. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read Jonathan's will. Evelyn's heart ached with every word, missing the warmth of Jonathan's presence, bracing herself for whatever came next. But when the lawyer announced that Jonathan had left Evelyn the old Whitmore mansion on the outskirts of town, the room erupted. Gregory leaned back, smirking cruelly. Fitting, don't you think? Our dear Evelyn gets the shack that's falling apart. Just like where she came from, Victoria's voice dripped with venom. Honestly, it's almost poetic. She'll be back where she belongs, in ruins, Charles chuckled, shaking his head. Imagine the neighbors, the Whitmore widow, living in that dump. People will say Daddy left her scraps. Guess some things never change. Their laughter echoed through the study like knives slicing flesh. Evelyn sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of her chair. Jonathan's portrait stared down at her, and for the first time since his passing, she felt truly alone. The lawyer tried to restore order, but the Whitmores had already decided Evelyn was nothing more than a joke. Their racism wasn't hidden anymore. It spilled into the open, sharp and poisonous. Victoria leaned close, her voice a whisper, meant to sting. You really thought Jonathan's love made you one of us? Sweetheart, it never did. It never will. Tears burned Evelyn's eyes, but she refused to let them see her break. She rose slowly, her voice trembling yet steady. Jonathan loved me. And that's more than you'll ever understand. She walked out, their laughter chasing her down the hall like a cruel shadow. When Evelyn finally arrived at the mansion Jonathan had left her, her chest tightened. The once grand estate stood like a ghost. Shutters broken, windows cracked, the roof sagging under years of neglect. Wild vines crawled up the stone walls like nature reclaiming what had been abandoned. Inside, the air smelled of dust and sorrow. Paint peeled from the walls, the chandeliers hung rusted and dull, and broken furniture sat covered in sheets. Evelyn dropped her small suitcase on the creaking floor and whispered to herself, So this is what they thought I deserved. She wandered room to room, her footsteps echoing. The emptiness pressed against her chest, threatening to crush her. For a moment, she almost believed the Whitmores were right, that she was nothing, that she didn't belong, that Jonathan had left her with nothing but ruin. But then as she entered the library, she noticed something odd. On the massive oak desk, untouched by dust, lay a small wooden box with her name carved into it. Her heart skipped. With trembling hands, Evelyn opened it. Inside was a letter in Jonathan's handwriting and a small brass key taped to the bottom. Evelyn sat in the dusty library, her trembling hands holding the letter Jonathan had left for her. The paper smelled faintly of cedar, his handwriting firm and familiar. She unfolded it carefully, her heart pounding in her chest. "My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I know my family will try to break you, to make you feel small, but never forget, you were the best part of my life. The mansion they mocked, it hides more than broken walls. I left you the key because within this house is the truth of everything I built. Trust no one but yourself. And when the time comes, you'll know what to do. With all my love," Jonathan, tears rolled down Evelyn's cheeks, falling onto the page. His words felt like a warm embrace, but also like a challenge. The brass key in her hand glinted faintly under the dim light of the broken chandelier. What could he have hidden in this ruined place? The next morning, Evelyn began exploring. She walked the empty halls, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The key burned in her pocket like a secret waiting to be uncovered. In the master bedroom, she pulled open dusty wardrobes. In the attic, she stumbled across boxes filled with old Whitmore photographs, grand family portraits of pale faces in tuxedos and gowns, glaring down at her with cold superiority. Evelyn felt the sting of their gaze, even from the faded photos. She whispered bitterly, "You never wanted me here." But I'm still standing. By late afternoon, she returned to the library. She noticed something odd about the oak desk. Its drawers didn't line up evenly. Running her fingers along the edges, she found a hidden latch. With a click, a small compartment opened. Inside was a lock. The brass key fit perfectly. The drawer slid open to reveal a leather-bound ledger thick with handwritten entries. Evelyn's eyes widened as she skimmed the pages. Numbers, bank accounts, hidden assets, offshore investments. And at the bottom of one page, circled twice in Jonathan's bold script, estimated value, $150 million. Her breath caught in her throat. Evelyn sat in stunned silence, the ledger heavy in her lap. Jonathan hadn't just left her a crumbling mansion. He had left her everything. Every cent, every hidden investment, every piece of wealth the Whitmores thought belonged to them. But why hide it? Why not put it in the will? Then it hit her. Jonathan knew his family. He knew the venom in their hearts, the racism in their blood. If the money had been left openly, they would have challenged it, bribed judges, twisted the law, until Evelyn was left with nothing. But by tying it to the mansion they mocked, he had hidden the fortune right under their noses. Her hands shook as she closed the ledger. For a moment, she felt powerful. For the first time since Jonathan's death, she wasn't just surviving. She had the upper hand. But then the fear crept in. If the Whitmores ever found out, they wouldn't just laugh. They would destroy her. 3 days later, the crunch of tires on gravel sent Evelyn's stomach into knots. From the cracked upstairs window, she saw Gregory's sleek black car pull up to the mansion gates. Out stepped Gregory, Victoria, and Charles, all dressed in expensive coats, their sneers sharper than ever. They had come to gloat. Inside, their voices echoed through the hollow halls. Gregory's laugh boomed. "Well, well, looks like the Queen of Ruins has settled in. How's life among the rats, Evelyn?" Victoria's eyes swept over the broken furniture with satisfaction. Tragic, isn't it? Jonathan had wealth beyond measure, and all you got was this. Guess even he knew you didn't belong. Charles smirked, leaning against the wall. Bet the neighbors already whisper. The Black Widow in the broken castle. Must sting. Evelyn stood her ground in the foyer, clutching her apron to hide her trembling hands. The urge to scream, to reveal the truth, burned inside her. But Jonathan's words echoed in her mind. Trust no one but yourself. So she bit back her tears, forcing her voice steady. This house is mine. That's all that matters, Gregory snorted. For now. But mark my words, you'll beg us for help soon enough. And when you do, we'll be here. Their laughter trailed off as they left, but Evelyn felt a storm rising in her chest. They thought she was weak. They thought she was beaten. They had no idea. Evelyn Carter stood alone in the crumbling halls of the mansion, her enemies circling like wolves. They believed she was broken, mocked her for her race, her love, her very existence. But within her grasp lay a secret fortune, powerful enough to shatter their empire. The question was, could she protect it? Or would their hatred consume her before the truth came to light? The mansion creaked under the weight of summer storms. Evelyn spent her nights pacing the halls, the ledger hidden beneath loose floorboards in the library. Every knock at the door made her heart skip. Every shadow outside the window felt like a Whitmore spy. She couldn't keep the secret forever. Soon, rumors started spreading in town. A banker who once handled Jonathan's accounts whispered about missing millions. A contractor mentioned Jonathan pulling out of projects without warning. The Whitmores were circling, sniffing for the scent of money like hounds on the trail. One evening, Evelyn overheard two women at the grocery store. They say she's sitting on something. Why else would Jonathan leave her that big old house? Please, you think a black maid's smart enough to hide millions? The Whitmores will tear her apart if she even tries. The words stung like acid, but Evelyn kept her head high. She knew the truth. And she knew the time was coming when she'd have to show the world exactly who she was. Weeks later, a letter arrived. Heavy cream paper, gold trim, stamped with the Whitmore crest. Evelyn's hands shook as she tore it open. It was a court summons. Gregory and Victoria had filed a petition, claiming Evelyn had unlawfully manipulated Jonathan into leaving her the estate. They accused her of fraud, deceit, and coercion. The racism was written between every line. To them, Evelyn could never have been loved by Jonathan, never trusted with wealth, never worthy of respect. She was nothing more than a maid who got lucky. And now, they wanted it all back. For the first time, Evelyn felt the weight of fear pressing her chest. How could she, one woman, stand against the Whitmore's power, against their lawyers, their influence, their lies? She walked into the library that night, stood over the loose floorboard, and whispered to herself, Jonathan, if you gave me this burden, you must have known I was strong enough to carry it. And with trembling hands, she lifted the ledger once more. The courthouse buzzed with whispers. On one side sat Gregory, Victoria, and Charles, dressed in sharp suits, their smugness radiating across the room. On the other side, Evelyn sat quietly in a simple black dress, clutching her Bible in one hand and Jonathan's letter in the other. The Whitmore's lawyer painted a brutal picture. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman was a maid, paid to clean, to serve. She preyed upon a wealthy man's kindness, tricking him into giving her property far beyond her station. This so-called marriage, a scandal, This inheritance? A fraud. Gasps filled the room. The Whitmores smirked, their plan unfolding perfectly. But when Evelyn's lawyer, a modest man named Mr. Harris, stood, the room shifted. His voice was calm but firm. Jonathan Whitmore was not a fool. He was a man who knew exactly what he was doing. This case isn't about fraud. It's about racism. About a family who could never accept that Jonathan loved Evelyn Carter, a black woman, and trusted her with his legacy. The Whitmores' faces tightened. Then Evelyn herself was called to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she walked slowly to the witness chair. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. "I didn't take anything from Jonathan," she said softly. "He gave me love when nobody else would. He gave me a home when the world tried to tell me I didn't belong. And when he left this earth, he gave me a gift, not just money, but faith. Faith that I could carry his legacy even when his own family turned against me." For a moment, the courtroom was still. Even the judge leaned forward, listening. The Whitmores' lawyer pressed harder, trying to break her. "If you truly claim this house was all Jonathan left you, where is the proof of these supposed hidden assets?" Evelyn hesitated. She could feel Jonathan's words echo in her mind. "Trust no one but yourself." Revealing the ledger meant exposing the secret, but keeping silent meant risking everything. Slowly, she reached into her handbag and pulled out the leather-bound book. Gasps rippled across the room as she set it on the table. "This," she said, her voice trembling but steady, "is Jonathan's ledger. Every investment, every hidden account. He left it with me, not with the Whitmores, because he trusted me, not them. Estimated value, $150 million. The judge's eyes widened. The Whitmores erupted into shouts of protest, their faces red with rage. Gregory slammed his fist on the table. Charles cursed under his breath. Victoria nearly fainted. But the damage was done. The truth was out. Days later, the ruling came down. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder. After reviewing the evidence, it is the decision of this court that Evelyn Carter is the sole legal heir to the Whitmore estate, including all assets documented within the ledger. The petition filed by Gregory, Victoria, and Charles Whitmore is hereby dismissed with prejudice. Evelyn closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. The Whitmores sat frozen, their empire shattered, their arrogance exposed for the world to see. As Evelyn walked out of the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted her name. But she didn't stop for interviews. She didn't need their validation. She had already won. Months later, the mansion looked different. No longer ruined, it had been restored, its broken windows replaced, its walls painted bright. Children from the community played in the garden, laughter echoing through the once silent halls. Evelyn had turned Jonathan's fortune into scholarships, community centers, and housing projects. She refused to let greed consume her, the way it had destroyed the Whitmores. Standing on the balcony, she whispered, "We did it, Jonathan. We proved them wrong," and in the rustle of the leaves, in the warmth of the sun, she felt his presence, proud, unwavering, eternal. The Whitmores laughed when Evelyn was left with nothing but a ruined mansion. They mocked her race, her love, her very existence. But in the ashes of their cruelty, Evelyn rose. She carried Jonathan's secret, faced their hatred, and stood unshaken in the storm. In the end, the true wealth wasn't just the millions she inherited. It was the dignity they could never take from her. And as the Whitmores faded into obscurity, Evelyn's legacy grew brighter. Because love, resilience, and justice will always outlive greed and hate.